The one thing that you likely experience with autoimmune disease, but nobody talks about, is the fact that autoimmune disease is coming for your identity. And the longer that you have autoimmune disease, the more at risk you are for the sick girl mentality. Today, we're going to be talking about what the sick girl mentality is and what you can do to not only start a healing journey that increases your odds of remission, but how you can reconnect with you again. Hi, my name is Gianna. I'm a board-certified clinical nutritionist, an autoimmune specialist, and a connective tissue condition expert. And this is the Autoimmune Babe podcast. Now, as someone who experienced scleroderma for over 10 years and now is 9 years in unmedicated remission, I know all too well about how autoimmune disease can really infiltrate your identity. I was diagnosed with scleroderma at 12 years old, and I think that you could agree that this is a really vulnerable time for not only just children forming their identity in relation to the world, but specifically girls in particular. Girls in particular at 12 years old are just really experiencing the onset of puberty. And at 12 years old, starting middle school, this could have not been a more vulnerable time to really be diagnosed with a condition that has both physical and emotional implications. But here's the craziest part, is that I don't think that scleroderma is unique in that way. Connective tissue autoimmune disease is both physical as it is emotional. And for you to actually start a healing journey that provides freedom, that provides you a path to not only tangible results, but like true chronic symptom relief, we have to embrace the emotional impact of the disease. And one of those things that I'm going to highlight that is, not so comfy of a conversation, but it's too important to skip, is how autoimmune disease latches onto your identity. And it takes time to release that bind. If you've had an autoimmune disease for a few years, I'm talking like over 5 years, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it's likely that you are experiencing a new level of grief. Now, in my opinion, both professionally and personally, autoimmune disease is traumatic. And with trauma comes grief, comes sorrow. And so even if you haven't had an autoimmune disease for 10 years, it's very likely that you've experienced the grief that I'm talking about, the grief of the old version of you, the grief of the life that you once loved, the grief of being told that your condition is incurable and all you have in your corner are medications that may or may not work. Now, we will be diving into that a little bit deeper later in the episode, but right now I really want to lock in on this grief and how this tends to change around that 7 to 10 year mark. Because at this point, you have been sick for so long that you're forgetting who that girl, that woman once was. This version of you that was healthy and spontaneous and full of life is becoming a distant memory. And there's something really tragic about that because you're forgetting what it's like to be healthy. You're so consumed by the symptoms, you're so consumed by the illness that survival mode has become your only mode. And you're doing it because you have to. You don't know how you're going to feel every morning. You don't know how you're going to feel in an hour from now. And so naturally, our brain is always on alert. Our brain is always expecting a hit. It's not a matter of if it's going to hit, it's a matter of when and how large. And so there's this belief system that is reinforced over and over and over again every day of our lives that this version of you is gone. She's dead. She's never coming back. And that belief system is being reinforced with evidence in your doctor's appointments because they're telling you that there's no cure and that you're going to have this for the rest of your life. So how in God's name is this possible to not only avoid the sick girl mentality, but to loosen its clench on your life? One, I think it really, really requires coming to terms with the fact that there is grief and that what you're experiencing is very real. And the next step in that is actually seeing that these responses that you're having, this emotional tornado, the depression, the despair, the grief that you experience every flare-up or most flare-ups, is actually a valid emotional response. Because let's be real, when you experience a flare up, especially with a connective tissue autoimmune disease, you can quite literally be debilitated. And then your body may or may not be different from that point forward. That is traumatic. So you're not too weak. You're not too sensitive. You're not too much. You're actually experiencing something that is valid, and having these crash outs and these breakdowns and these depressive episodes, at least in my opinion, is just a part of the autoimmune experience. And so what can happen? What can really manifest from this continuous trauma is something called the sick girl identity. And I called it the sick girl identity because this was the identity that I held. So please know, when I say the sick girl mentality, this is not a this is you, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. If you taking offense to it, for example, this was me for years, my entire teenage years, from 12 to 22. This was the identity that I held, because for me to survive, I had to place myself in this world that I was growing up in. And the only thing that was truly constant in my life was that I was sick. And so it was protective. And as time went on and this girl that I once knew became more and more of a distant memory, this identity really sunk in, and it started to become who I was entirely, not just an element of my life experience. And so what I realized was that the deeper and deeper the sick girl mentality grew roots, the harder and harder it was to hope, because this mentality was just reinforced over and over and over again with every flare-up, with every symptom, with every depressive episode, with every, doctor's appointment that didn't go well. This sick girl identity was reinforced. So how the heck do you escape this identity that is chock full of evidence? And we're going to be diving into that today. We're going to be diving into, really kind of shining a light on something that it's very likely that no one's really talking about, because it's not really comfortable to talk about. And I am here to tell you that your illness is not your identity. Your life legacy is not your sickness. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, you have gifts, you have dreams, you have talents, you have influence right now in your life that you might feel like is out of reach for you, but it's not. It can be within your reach. Better health and freedom and a fulfilling, full of life journey in this world can be within your reach. And so today we're going to focus and lock in on one specific step of this. And the first thing is highlighting the grief. The second thing is highlighting the mentality, the sick girl mentality. And the third is how you start to release this clench of something that should not be your identity. And so when we're talking about the sick girl mentality, this can be an emotional conversation. It could be one that you could be offended by. And if you are, that's okay. Honestly, I feel like if you're offended by it, you're the very person that needs to see this. And it's spoken in love, not superiority. The reason why we're talking about it is because the sick girl mentality can quite literally stop you in your tracks when it comes to a healing journey. So in a way, this is a little bit of a disclaimer. If you are starting an autoimmune healing journey, if you are someone who wants to fight for their health, inside and outside the doctor's office, you have to be aware of the sick girl mentality and how it can quite literally hold you back. Now, let me give you an example of what this often looks like, at least what I see with, potential clients or conversations that I have often. One, it's this desire of wanting to be healthier, but not moving. So it's wanting and wishing, but not being willing enough to take one step. And so that's one way this can manifest. Another way it can manifest is the all or nothing mentality. You see, the all or nothing mentality, in my opinion, is the most common and the most dangerous. I experienced the all or nothing mentality because it usually looks a little something like, okay, I'm going to do the AIP diet. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to focus on the discipline. I am going all freaking in on this. 2 weeks later, you're overwhelmed. You're defeated. Because you're like, wait, do I actually have what it takes to heal? And this mentality, this sick girl identity will tell you, no, you don't, because you're going to be sick forever. And then what our brain does, because our brain likes to predict stuff. That's one of the reasons why you may have heard that your brain will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And this is why your brain is trying to protect you. It's actually doing what it's designed to do very, very well. The problem is it's actually holding you back. And so what will happen is that there will be a ton of receipts, a ton of evidence, and being like, well, don't you see? And it'll show you flare-ups and pain and doctor's reports and conversations and other times where you have perceived yourself as failing. And now this roadblock that could be navigated through is a reinforcement to this belief that you cannot heal, that you are too far gone, that healing is just not in the cards for you. You're just not that type of person. You're a sick girl. Do you see how it's not about being toxically positive? It's about getting evidence to change your beliefs. How do we start to loosen this grasp of the sick girl mentality? We don't just think more positive, we get more evidence. And the cool thing is that wins are evidence. Think about a time where you've won. Now, I will share with you a very short story. I am someone who, when I share a story, if you're anything like me, I'll like share every freaking detail. The ADHD in me loves a good detail more than the person that is actually listening to the story. So, given details. And so one time in summer camp in second grade, I was in a color war battle. And this camp was elementary school kids. So from like first grade to fifth grade. And I'll never forget, we were playing dodgeball and it was me, a second grader, against two fifth graders. And somehow I threw the ball and I got one fifth grader out. And now it was just me and one fifth grader. And I was terrified, but there was something in me that was like, okay, just watch where the ball is going. You're not going to get hurt. Just watch where the ball is going. And he wound it up and threw it at me. And I literally closed my eyes. Like there was no strategy in me catching this ball, but I caught it and he got out. And I won the game for my entire team. And they like picked me up. And so I'm telling you this story because I want you to think back to a time where you felt like a winner. Where even if it was a summer camp color wars, or maybe it was a championship game for, sport that you played, or maybe it was a time where you were in the backyard and you were the fastest runner or swimmer, whatever that was for you. I want you to think back to a time where you won. And it's very, very likely that you can think back to this memory and clearly remember it. And this is what evidence is. It's something that your brain can look back on and be like, you're right, there was a time. There was a moment, and this was that moment. And so this is one of the reasons why in the last podcast, I highlighted the next step mentality. And if you have not watched this episode or listened to this episode, I highly recommend to go back and listen to that episode because these episodes go hand in hand together. One of the most effective ways that you can loosen the grip of the sick girl mentality is really leaning in to the step-by-step mentality. Sick girl identity, step-by-step mentality. I think I might have said that wrong a couple of times, but forgive me. And this is what we want to do when we are loosening the grip of an identity like an old software system that it was helpful in the past, but it's no longer helpful anymore. There's a new updated software that is going to get you to the next level. So a little trick that can allow you to get started is starting early in the day. So something that I usually recommend to clients, this can be with a consultation or clients that are in the road to remission 6-month intensive, is we actually start with hydration. And you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Like hydration is good for me, blah, blah, blah. And like, yes, of course it is. And if we utilize this step strategically, we can get you feeling like a winner. We can get you winning first thing in the morning. And so not only is drinking 20 ounces of water first thing in the morning before food and caffeine physically beneficial, but if we position it in your day, the very start of the day, it actually has an emotional element as well. And you start to see yourself as someone who fights for their health. What is just an added bonus to this is that this is something that is within the capacity of being able to do it. It's accessible even when you're not feeling your best. So when you're not feeling your best, you're leaning in and being like, okay, I'm going to drink my water. At least I drank my water today. At least I drank my 20 ounces first thing in the morning. And this is how we slowly loosen the grip of the sick girl mentality. And simultaneously, we're increasing your odds of remission. Now, of course, there's more that we need to do together than drinking water. But if you skip drinking water, then how are you supposed to restore your body from the inside out and the outside in, especially with a connective tissue autoimmune disease? We have to start with the basics, and the basics are both physical and emotional. Now, if you are someone who feels like you are struggling with the sick girl identity and you feel like it's deeply, deeply rooted, I want to personally invite you to download a freebie. It's called How to Heal Alongside Medication. This is a resource that really invites you into a new world of thinking and being like, okay, yes, my doctors are saying that I need to take medications, but there's something that you can do outside of the doctor's office that actually sets you up for success. And there are tangible steps inside that free resource that can actually help you get started. So I want to personally invite you to download that resource. The link to download it now is in the description underneath this video. I hope that this podcast was helpful for you. Make sure that if you haven't already, since this is a new podcast when it comes to YouTube, make sure if you haven't already to subscribe to this channel. We release podcasts every Tuesday. And if you know someone who has a connective tissue condition like scleroderma, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and more, feel free to share this episode with them. The truth is that hope is not very common when it comes to these types of diagnoses. And you never know how profound and powerful this message could be to someone who deeply, deeply needs it. I'll see you next time. Bye.